Locked on Longhorns, the show. Jonathan Davis, your host. Today's episode of Locked on Longhorns is brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online, where the game starts. On January 5th, 2023, we learned that Chris Beard is no longer the head coach of the Texas men's basketball program, stemming from an incident on December 12th where he was arrested on felony domestic violence charges, including strangulation of his fiancee. Since December 12th, Chris Beard had been suspended without pay, while the University of Texas took time to conduct their own investigation. And on January 5th, we learned the results of that investigation, with Chris Beard being terminated from his post as the head men's basketball coach at the 40 Acres. On December 12th, Chris Beard's fiance called the police, alleging that she had felt like her life had been threatened. Her and Chris Beard had gotten into an altercation. They had not been on the best of terms. It started with her breaking his reading glasses, per the police report, which led to an altercation in the main bedroom, which led to Chris Beard's arrest and ultimately led to his firing. The police report claimed that she had confirmed injuries with bruises to her head, bruises to her legs, and bite marks on her arm. In her initial statement, Chris Beard's fiance said that she was strangled by Chris Beard. In a second statement made a few weeks ago, she said that that did not happen. In her second statement made a few weeks ago by Chris Beard's fiance, she said that she would not dispute that Chris Beard was acting in self-defense. Chris Beard and his representatives said that they had proof that he was acting in self-defense, a recording that they did not wish to publish. Domestic violence is tricky, and I don't know what happened in that house that night. I can only go off of the police report. Only Chris Beard and his fiance really know what happened in that house that night. But I think the University of Texas made the right decision, and I think the University of Texas made the only decision that they could make. Because an endorsement of Chris Beard as your head men's basketball coach is an endorsement of domestic violence. And an endorsement of Chris Beard is an endorsement of the actions that took place the night of December 12th. And domestic violence is wrong, period. And a university as prestigious as the University of Texas has no business entertaining or endorsing domestic violence. No university, period, has any business entertaining or endorsing domestic violence. And no human being has any business entertaining or endorsing domestic violence. And so this is a very sad situation involved. It's a very sad situation, and I'm hoping everybody involved has the wherewithal and the strength to be able to move forward and be better from this situation. It's sad for Chris Beard, his fiance, his daughters, their family and friends as a whole, the University of Texas, this Texas men's basketball team, and all of these players that committed to Chris Beard and believed in Chris Beard, and Rodney Terry, who now has to pick up the pieces and steer the ship with a very talented basketball team that has national championship aspirations this year. And speaking of Chris Beard, he was one of the best in the business at what he did, separating the art from the artist here a little bit. Chris Beard was one of the best at what he did in the business. He was renowned as one of the best head basketball coaches in college basketball. He had grinded for 20 years to get to the position he is at now. And he lost it all in one night because of his inability to separate himself from a toxic situation, his inability to regulate his emotions, and his inability to control his anger. And so let this be a lesson to all of us. Not that any of us are capable of committing domestic violence. I'm not saying that. But let this be a lesson to us that everything you've worked for, relationships, friendships, family, careers, finances, can be lost in one night if you can't control your anger and regulate your emotions. Because Chris Beard grinded for 20 years to be a Power 5 head coach. And he achieved that goal, and he lost it all in one night. When he left the University of Texas as a student, he aspired to come back and be the head men's basketball coach at the 40 Acres. He achieved that and was doing a hell of a job. And he lost it all in one night. We all aspire to be financially stable, financially comfortable, grow up and make a lot of money, right? Chris Beard was making millions of dollars to do what he loved. And he lost it all in one night. And that one night has forever affected his life. It's affected relationships, friendships, and the perspective of him as a whole. We're all better than our worst mistakes, but second chances aren't created equally. And when we think of Chris Beard now, we're not going to think of that head coach that grinded for 20 years to get to the position he's at now. He was at. We're not going to think of the head coach that took Texas Tech to the national championship game in 2019. We're not going to think of the head coach that had the University of Texas men's basketball program as the number 2 team in the country with wins over Gonzaga and Creighton at the time of this incident. We're going to think of Chris Beard as his worst mistake. We're going to think of Chris Beard. When you think of Chris Beard, you're going to think domestic violence, and rightfully so. And so once again, I just want this to be a lesson to all of us. And this is a lesson to me as well. I've been in situations where, not domestic violence situations, but situations where my inability to control my anger and regulate my emotions could have cost me everything. And this can happen to any of us, whether it's domestic violence or any other situation. And like I said, we're all better than our worst mistakes, but second chances aren't created equally. And because Chris Beard had reached the mountaintop, the higher up you are, the harder you fall. And the actions that took place on December 12th are the reason he'll never coach basketball at the University of Texas again. And the actions that took place on December 12th may be the reason he never coaches college basketball again. Our inability to regulate our emotions and control our anger can be our downfall for any of us. And we're witnessing it in real time with Chris Beard, who is no longer the head coach at the University of Texas. A quick word from Bet Online and Built Bar, and then we're going to talk about the basketball team and Rodney Terry and what this means for the rest of the season. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. And if you're hungry and looking for a delicious treat, but don't want all of the fat and the calories, then you have to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little bit healthier this year. And if you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but don't want to compromise taste, then man, I've got just the thing for you. You have to try Built. With Built Bar, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Well, for starters, they are all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in amazing flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. I'm not sure how Built does it, but they do it every single time. And these Built Bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. I know after listening to this ad read, you are super duper hungry. So head to built.com right now and get your Built Bars in flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and more. So I want to make it clear, and I said this in the last segment, that I'm hoping that Chris Beard and everybody involved in this situation has the strength and the wherewithal to move forward and be better from this situation. We all deserve a second chance. And like I said, second chances aren't created equally, but we all deserve a second chance. We all deserve the opportunity to be better than our worst mistakes. We are all better than our worst mistakes. When you looked at this basketball team coming into the season, a lot of people said that this was a sneaky national championship contender based on who was the head coach, Chris Beard, one of the best in the business at the time, and the amount of talent that you had on this roster. You had a great blend of returning experience in Marcus Carr, Brock Cunningham, Timmy Allen, Dylan Dessou, and then Serge Rice transferring from New Mexico State. And then you had an influx of young, very talented players in Tyrese Hunter, who was the freshman of the year in the Big 12 last year, transferring from Iowa State, and then blue chip freshmen in Arterio Morris and Dillon Mitchell. And after 2 top 10 wins in the Moody Center against Gonzaga and Creighton, this team went from a sneaky national championship contender to a legit national championship contender. Jason Jordan, director of basketball recruiting at Sports Illustrated, came on the show after the Gonzaga game and said, this looks like the best team in the country at this point. And now, for the last 6 or 7 games since December 12th, there's been a dark cloud hanging over this basketball team. And I'm hoping the closure that they got on January 5th will propel them forward for the remainder of the season. I'm hoping now that they have closure, even though they probably knew that this was going to happen, now that they have closure, they can rally around each other, rally around Rodney Terry, who will be the coach for the remainder of the season, and still achieve everything they sought out to achieve over the summer. But when you look at it, in my opinion, this dark cloud hanging over this basketball team created by Chris Beard and his actions on December 12th, this basketball team has not been the same. And when you look at it on the night of December 12th, granted, obviously you're dealing with a lot. You just found out that morning that your head coach had been arrested. Rodney Terry has to step in that day. They're 24-point favorites over a Rice University team that they end up going to overtime with and giving up 81 points to. This team had only allowed 70-plus points to Gonzaga, top 10 team, Creighton, top 10 team, and Illinois, top 20 team at the time. But since then, they've given up 81 points to Rice, 72 points to Louisiana Lafayette, 72 points to Texas A&M Commerce, and 116 points in 40 minutes in regulation to the Kansas State Wildcats. This team that was built on grit, toughness, and defense does not have the same intensity and attention to detail right now. And I can't blame them because, like I said, this dark cloud is hanging over the Texas men's basketball program. And we can only hope that the closer that they got on January 5th will propel them forward. Because with or without Chris Beard, this still is a championship level roster. And with or without Chris Beard, this team and those players still feel like they can reach the mountaintop. And so I'm hoping that they can rally around each other, continue to get better through conference play, and make a run in the tournament. Because this is one of the best rosters we've seen in Texas basketball in a while. And you're hoping that you were able to maximize that this year. And now the ceiling that we saw coming into the season, the ceiling that we saw after Gonzaga and Creighton, it looks just a tad bit lower. And when you talk about the future, Texas has secured 2 5-star commitments in A.J. Johnson and Ron Holland for next year. So not only did this year looked promising and it looked like Texas was the next big thing in college basketball, you knew that you had a great set of players coming in and a great roster next year. But we know in college, you commit more to coaches than you commit to the university. Every player on this basketball team currently committed to Chris Beard. Ron Holland and A.J. Johnson from the 2023 class, they committed to Chris Beard. And so it'll be interesting to see moving forward how those commitments go. But you would have to assume at the least that they're considering what's going on. You would have to assume at the least that those commitments aren't concrete right now when they just found out the coach they committed to they won't be playing for. So it'll be interesting to see how the University of Texas, this basketball team, and this program is able to bounce back from this. But the inability for Chris Beard to separate himself from a toxic situation, and the inability for Chris Beard to regulate his emotions on that one night, and the inability for Chris Beard to control his anger on that one night has affected this basketball team this year and may have changed the trajectory of this basketball team moving forward. In the coming weeks, and maybe towards the end of the season, we'll talk about a coaching search. But for now, we're going to focus on Rodney Terry and getting this team to make a deep run in the tournament. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Longhorns, your daily number one source for all things Texas athletics, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hook 'em and peace.